Hey everyone, welcome to the Call to Defend podcast. It's Josh here, and we're going to be continuing our conversation regarding the Chaos Waters. So I'm here without Caleb again. Hopefully he'll be here next week. We just had a really long week. We couldn't really get time together to actually record this episode. But we, of course, have our announcement for November coming up, and we will be doing our other podcasts. So, we will be recording these together eventually. But we're going to be looking at Psalm 33 today, which is a beautiful psalm. We're not going to go through all of it. We're just going to go through up to a certain point where it starts to talk about the Tehom, which, interestingly enough, I think if you pay attention, you'll notice it uses more than just this one word, and it's quite fascinating and beautiful. But anyways, let's begin at verse 1. Shout for joy in the Lord, O you righteous, praise befits the upright. Give thanks to Yahweh with the lyre. Make melody to him with the harp of 10 strings. Sing to him a new song. Play skillfully on the strings with loud shouts. I want to pause there. If you've been following us for a little while, you know that I'm a musician. I'm a music teacher, and I'm a percussionist and drum set player. Marimba, love all percussion. I play a little bit of guitar and piano, and I had to learn all of them to be able to teach music. But this, I love the idea of, making sure that we bring a skillful craft, that all these things can be used to glorify the Lord. I remember that in one of my classes we talked about regarding church history, there was the whole question over if instruments were allowed in the church, of which I understand the concern behind it, but also we have passages like this where he's talking about skillfully worshiping the Lord with the skillful usage of instruments. And it's just beautiful to see how God has created human beings with the ability to create things such as an instrument, to provide such beautiful music that we can use to accompany or even be the thing we're using to glorify the Lord with in worship. Anyways, that's just an aside as a musician. I always think it's kind of beautiful to see how God has provided us with the ability to be creative and how we can use those creative elements to bring glory to him in many ways, such as music, which is very near and dear to my heart. But in verse 4, for the word of the Lord is upright, and all his works is done in faithfulness. He loves righteousness and justice. The earth is full of the steadfast love of the Lord. By the word of the Lord the heavens were made, and by the breath of his mouth all their host. He gathers the waters, or he gathers the mayim of the Yam as a heap. He puts the Tehom in storehouses. Let all the earth fear the Lord. Let all the inhabitants of the world stand in awe of him. For he spoke, and it came to be. He commanded it, and it stood firm. All right, we can keep going. There's more to the psalm, and it's beautiful. And it's only 22 verses, but we're not here to do an entire exegesis of this psalm. We're still continuing our focus on the Chaos Waters. And as you probably heard and saw, in verse 6 to 7 is where we get that focus. Now, by the word of Yahweh, the heavens were made, and by the breath of his mouth, all their host. Okay, first off, that's verse 6, prior to the waters. But we're getting a looking back onto creation. We're looking back at when it says that Yahweh makes the heavens and then breathes of his mouth all their hosts. So he brings into creation, or he brings into order, the heavens, which is the skies, the shamayim, or as we talk about the waters above, and which is really interesting. When you look at the root of the words, you have mayim in that word, and you put shah in front of it. It's the waters above. Is the way of viewing the sky, which, I think we kind of mentioned this, but it makes sense. You look up the sky, and it's this blue thing. You look at the water, and it's this other blue thing. You're like, oh, it must be water. Rain comes down from it. The things that fly up there move as elegantly as the things in the sea. There must be something similar here, which might be why that they share a creation day with, day 5, with the whole idea that you have the sea creatures and the birds. There's something interesting parallels between them. And obviously, we're not saying that birds are sea creatures. I mean, they eat sea creatures sometimes, but there's this interesting element where they're seen as like there's the upper waters and the lower waters, and that there's this parallel between the birds, who are also land creatures, but they move about in the air in the area where there is a barrier from the waters above, and then below is where the waters are of the sea creatures, but also with the angels as well. And so this is looking back on the creation narrative a little bit, because then he says, he gathers the waters of the sea as a heap, and he puts the deeps, or the Tehom, in storehouses. Now, if you've been following us for a little bit now, we've been doing this chaos water discussion. I think it's like, episode 4 or 5? And we talked about how in Genesis 6 with the flood narrative and with Exodus 14 and 15, looking at the Sea of Reeds, or the Red Sea, as many of us know, with the parting of the sea, that we see the water being parted and gathered so that way there can be dry land. You know, in the Exodus passage, we have it parted so that way the Israelites could cross through into the passageway unto life. And I love how my one friend, he wasn't going to record this, but he said, it's like, we were talking about this, but he was like, if you look at it, they're looking back onto the seashore or wherever they are, talking about how vastly big the Red Sea is, but they're looking back, and it's almost like if you're looking forward, you're looking towards life, and you're looking back, it's towards death. And then comparing that with, something like Sodom and Gomorrah, with Lot's wife looking back unto death, and then Lot's family looking forward unto life for survival. But then we also saw in Genesis 6 how the waters were, came back and converged and covered the land. But then it says that they receded and went back to their domain. Going back to the way they were set up in Genesis chapter 1, looking at day 2, where God parts this waters from below and above, and then on day 3, where he gathers the waters into their spot. And so I would argue this is probably more looking at the Genesis 1 narrative, but it's also replayed in the flood narrative and in the Exodus narrative. And we didn't talk about this, but there are other passages as well where they don't use waters, but they describe events as if it is a flood event, as if it is a decreation event. But what we see here is this beautiful element of how they're tying together these three words again. We have Mayim, we have Yam, and we have Tehom. And this is something that's being used as a demonstration of why we should be praising and rejoicing, but also why we should be having this rightful fear of him, this rightful awe of him. We should rejoice with the fact that he has the power to separate the waters so that there could be land and we could have life. Because we're land creatures. We're not water creatures. We don't live in water. Now, could God have made us that way? Sure, but he didn't. We need there to be dry land. And so it's a celebration for us to have that access to life, to not be caught up in the chaos waters, to not be in the waters, to be part of life, to be part of this ordered land. And that's part of the reason why we should rejoice that he has control over that. I mean, think about it. We are given dominion over almost everything, but we don't have dominion over the waters, right? We have dominion over a lot of things, but the waters is not one of them. It's like this weird, beautiful parallel of like God saying, okay, you're my royal representatives. You're going to act like priests. You're going to act like kings. You're going to be my Tselem, if you want to go check our Image of God series on that. But also, remember who is truly in charge, because there are things outside of your control, and you need to rely on me to control that because you do not have the ability to do so. And there's this level of we should be rejoicing that he is in control, that he has control over the things that we can't comprehend, the things that we can't combat against. We can't combat against chaos. We can't combat against the sea and the waters. I mean, sure, if you look today, we have all these tools to help us kind of like use water for, like power or for drinking or for swimming. But still, the waters, when they get into their stormy, chaotic state, there's no way that we can control that. It is a force beyond our control. Now imagine that in light of spiritual forces. Because we haven't really gone here yet, but we're going to be getting here. How sometimes the description of chaos waters or the wilderness or the chaos monsters are also not just looking at like actual forces of nature, but also looking at human beings and looking at spiritual beings. And how, think about it, we don't have control over spiritual beings. We don't have any way to really combat them apart of reliance and faith of Christ and in our Lord. But we get here is that God is the one who has ultimate control over all of it. He can step in and, put them in their place, rebuke them. I mean, that's one of the beautiful things we're going to get into with the Matthew passages and Mark, where it doesn't just say that God or Jesus told, where we don't just get that Jesus is calming the storms. It says that he rebukes the storms. We'll get into that some more later. I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves. I would really love to have Caleb be part of that conversation. But also looking at verse 8, that next bit, let all the earth fear the Lord. Let all the inhabitants of the world stand in awe of him. For he spoke and it came to be. He commanded and it stood firm. Like looking at this, look at this. I mean, the waters are put into order. They are put into a place. The earth is held firm on the waters, and that he has control to still it, and that they are gathered and put into the right place. This is something that we should be, again, in rejoicing, but also in fear and awe of recognizing, praise God that he is the one who controls the things that we can't comprehend, the things that we can't do. But also, oh my goodness, let us remember that he is God and that I'm not. He is the one who has this control. He is the one who has this ability to deal with the chaos, to turn them into this thing that's not just chaos water. I mean, again, let's look at Genesis 1, verse 2, where it says that there was darkness over the surface of the Tehom, and that says the Spirit of God was hovering over the surface of the Mayim. It's a weird thing. It's like saying when God is present, there is no chaos. And then apart from God is darkness and absence of life. And it's not to say there's this opposite of God. It's this idea of like to be with God or to be without God. It is the very fact that he is the source of life. He is the source of wisdom. To be apart from him and to deny him is to be apart from life, true life, and to be part of from wisdom, true wisdom. And this is something that we just need to recognize, especially as Christians, that we fully depend on him for life, for our breath, and for wisdom. We fully depend on him, and we depend on the things that Christ has done and that he is doing in us today. But again, just looking here, by the word of the Lord, the heavens were made, and the breath of his mouth, all their hosts. He gathers the water of the sea as a heap, and he puts the deep in the storehouses. He has control over the waters, something that we cannot do. Let us be in rejoice with the fact that he has this control, and let's also be in reverence and fear and in awe of the very fact that we do not have this control and that he does. And if he has control over this stuff that is greater than us, you better believe he has control over you. And that's something to be afraid of. God asserting his power against you for the things that you are doing against him, for acting as a force of chaos, for acting as a chaos monster, for acting as a vessel of sin rather than a vessel of life.